and in playing a string of records, the like of which I'd never heard before in my life.
Personally, at times I found it unlistenable, but it was the fact that you had absolutely no idea what was coming next, and that invariably there would be something in his show that was going to be the most inspiring thing you'd ever heard.
At a time when pop music was becoming increasingly compartmentalised, both in the way that record companies were thinking and the way that radio stations were doing their programming, John Peel was a maverick. He broke down the barriers and you never knew what to expect. Over the years, he championed anything from the psychedelic bands of the 60s, the Faces, through to the Specials, Joy Division, the Fall, or more recently, the White Stripes or the Libertines. And then there was country music or English folk music, and indeed black styles, reggae and African music from the Congo or Zimbabwe, long before the term world music had been invented. And on top of all of that, there were the demo tapes sent to him in their hundreds by aspiring bands.
Well, that's part of the process. I can't put a programme together without listening to music.
He was famous for keeping all the records and CDs he was sent. His house had to be expanded to hold them all, while his Radio 1 office was also cluttered with demo tapes from still unknown bands desperate to hear his opinion of their work. Andy Kershaw shared that office for 9 years.
3 asterisks means must play.
The demo tapes and the sheer volume of stuff that we used to get sent, you know, vinyl and CDs, John would have anxiety attacks about this because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, he'd be terrified of letting down, you know, the band of 16-year-old kids from wherever that had sent him a demo tape, and oh my goodness me, they're piling up at home, and I've not got through them yet. And the other thing he was scared of course, is that he might miss something.
One song that Peel most certainly didn't miss was released on an indie label in 1978 by a band from Northern Ireland, The Undertones. He liked it so much he once played Teenage Kicks twice in succession.
5 kids from Northern Ireland put a record in the post, and it got listened to, and it got played on the John Peel show, and my life changed overnight. And John has done that on so many occasions, and to this day, and I suspect waiting at home for him right now, there will be another couple of hundred records from little bands, musicians all over the world. And the one guarantee they always had, John would listen to every single one of those records.
John Peel was born John Ravenscroft in Heswall in Merseyside, where his mother had these portraits taken. He grew up to be an avid Liverpool football fan who in the early 60s went to the States to work in radio. He came back as a DJ on the pirate stations before moving in 1967 to the BBC's new youth pop programme Radio 1. The same year that he appeared alongside Mark Bolan and the then Tyrannosaurus Rex on Frowning Atahualpa.
Kingsley Mole sat high on a windy knoll, his eyes consuming the silent midnight woods. He nuzzled his long, moly snout deep inside the heart of a marigold.
All you did was wreck my bed, and in the morning kick me in the head. Oh, Maggie, I couldn't have tried anymore.
3 years later, he appeared playing mandolin alongside Rod Stewart and Ron Wood, then with the Faces. John Peel will be remembered for his enormous impact on the British music scene, but he was also a great and a natural broadcaster.
Hello and welcome to Home Truths, a name chosen only when it became an administrative impossibility for programme planning to continue without a name.
For the past 6 years, he moved from Radio 1 to Radio 4 on Saturday mornings to present the often quirky Home Truths.
The thing that makes him stand out, I think, was his wit. He wrote wonderful droll scripts. You would be standing in your kitchen on a Saturday morning, listening to Home Truths in the background, and suddenly you'd catch one of his dry witticisms, and it would just make you laugh.
I think Teenage Dreams So Hard to Beat is a kind of nice summary, you know. And I'd quite like to have that on my tombstone.
I'm joined now from Derry by Michael Bradley of the Undertones and from Manchester by Mark E. Smith of the Fall. Michael, first in Derry, we heard a bit from Fergal Sharkey there about how important John Peel was to getting you started, but how did you actually make that connection with him?
I think like hundreds of other bands, what you did was if you made a record and it was an independent record, you posted it to John Peel, Radio 1 London, and hoped for the best. And I suppose we did get the best. You know, he played it, he loved it, and so on. So that's what people did in those days, because there was no one else to send it to.
But he helped you make your demo tapes as well, didn't he?
Yeah, we sent him a demo tape. It wasn't very good, to be brutally honest about it, but he liked something about it, and then he asked us then to go into a studio in Belfast to make another tape, and he paid for it himself, and he did eventually broadcast it. It wasn't great quality either, to be very honest, but he paid it out of his own pocket, you know.
Mark, what about you? Was it the same story with The Fall?
No, not at all. I got in touch with him through John Walters, his producer.
And what happened? How did you get in touch? You just phoned him up and said you've got a band, or what?
They just wrote to me and said, nobody else is going to put your music on the radio, but we will. So I always appreciate him and John for that.
You wonder, Michael, how he got through all this stuff. I mean, if every 16-year-old who had a guitar who wanted to make it sent John Peel a tape in the way that you did, how would he ever listen to it all?
Well, as I said on the phone there, he just had to just put his head down and do it. It had a terrible conscience, and he didn't really want to let anyone down. And that was so obvious. Even whenever he came to Derry, he did a documentary film about the band, and he came to Derry, and anyone who stopped him, and we had 16-year-olds coming here looking to talk to him, he would stand and talk to them for as long as they wanted. And we often had to move him on, because otherwise he would still be there probably.
Mark, he seemed to become obsessed with The Fall. Well, I suppose he became obsessed with lots of people from various points. He just played endlessly and endlessly. Must have been an incredible compliment.
What, for The Fall?
Yeah.
Yeah. Me and John had an agreement, we never were friends or anything like that, This is what I admired about him. He was always objective. People forget that.
What did you, I'm interested to know what you thought of his programme, Mark. When you listened to it, presumably you did listen to it a lot. I mean, what did you actually think of him as a broadcaster?
Well, I listened to it in like the early 70s when I was a teenager and that. And I heard a lot of Jamaican stuff and German stuff through him, But we were always like at arm's distance.
Michael, you knew him a bit better. What did you make of him? He was for anybody who met him, he was very warm. He was very funny, as we heard from Helen Bowden there. He was very droll sense of humour.
It was exactly the same whenever you met him in person as he was on the radio. And Mark's right there when he says that he wasn't friendly with any of the bands. We met him a couple of times, but I think he was always very careful to keep his distance. He didn't want to be associated with any type of show business at all. He was very reluctant to take any credit for what he did on the radio. All he ever described himself as doing was playing records. He said he was incredibly lucky to be able to do that. And he was very, very self-effacing and very funny.
The bit, Mark, that is amazing just to listen to that tribute to him there from Robin Denzil and so on, that everybody from T-Rex onwards, every generation seemed to find something for every generation, including The Fall.
Okay, am I allowed to speak now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right. Yeah, whatever you say. What, are you the new one? Are you the new DJ?
Yeah, probably. But Michael, just a final thought on that. Andy Kershaw called him the single most important figure in the history of British rock music. It's certainly true that Irish popular culture as well would have been very different without him, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, the thing is, a lot of people would have had the same taste as John Peel. It's just that very few of them actually made it into a career on the radio. So we were kind of lucky that, I suppose, somebody with a bit of sense lasted so long at Radio 1. And, for all sorts of bands, if John Peel hadn't been there, who knows, like the records might have never made it into the shops.
Michael, did you ever listen to him in Home Truths as well? Because the thing, as a broadcaster, you felt that you knew this man, even if you didn't. Everything from the Radio 1 show when he was talking about Liverpool and his wife and his kids, to Home Truths when it did seem that he was at home doing it.
Oh, that's right. I love Home Truths, and every Saturday morning. It's a terrible admission to make, I know, but I would have heard him more recently on Home Truths than I would have on his Radio 1 show. And the thing about him, that his humour came across, but also he had a great skill in interviewing people, sometimes in very sensitive subjects, you know, and he came across as someone who didn't really, I imagine he didn't really enjoy interviewing people. But he did a brilliant job of it. You know, he made people feel very, very relaxed, and just a great programme. He will be very badly missed.
Okay, thank you both very much. Thank you. Now, it is, depending on your views